Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Good Thinking Live. If you're here on LinkedIn, welcome to LinkedIn Live. If you're here on YouTube at Becky Salzman, welcome to YouTube Live. What I realize is that the people that are here on YouTube can't see the comments from the people who are here on LinkedIn and vice versa, but I can see all of your comments. So please let me know that you're here, where you're from. And sometimes I can get to the comments because I can see them in the stream, and sometimes they go and I can't see them. So if I don't recognize you during the show, it only means that I missed your comment because I couldn't see it. But chances are I will be able to see. So let me know that you're here and where you're from. We've got rubber chickens, although I'm on a green screen today because my office is being otherwise occupied. So I have a green screen to keep all the non-office stuff out of the picture. But welcome to Good Thinking Live. This is the show each week, almost every Monday. There's some Mondays we have to skip if other work gets in the way. But each Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or Pacific Time here on the West Coast of the United States, and 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time for everyone. And I love that we have this international audience. I love that we have this audience from all over the country and all over the world. Let me know who you are and where you're from. This is going to be a very short, sweet show. And we are going to focus today on, again, a little bit of time away from all the time we spend on what to think, to devote a little bit of more time to improving how to think. But today's episode specifically has to do with the distinction, the difference between reasoning and rationalizing. And we're not going to make it about like this word salad kind of deep philosophy, which is super interesting, but it's more about practical applications of using good thinking that you can apply to your daily life for your own decisions, to make better arguments, to make better decisions, and also so that your own decisions aren't swayed by people who may be not using good thinking principles, because good thinking principles are great, but bad thinking principles can also be persuasive. So I'm going to say hi to Stephen. Greetings from 31 miles northwest of Estacada Festival of the Fungus. Estacada Festival of the Fungus. Okay, you need to put that in the link. If there's an Estacada Festival of the Fungus, because I have an obsession with fungus. For any of you who have not seen the movie Fantastic Fungus, watch it. And then Mary Ann from Dallas, Texas. Hi, Mary Ann. Salome from Nambia in Africa. Fantastic. I love that we've got people from all over the country and all over the world. And then also Stephen, right here in the Pacific Northwest. But he's required each week to come up with like a clever reason to a clever description of where he's from. So I love that. But he has to now put in the link to Estacada Festival of the Fungus. All right. Some more of you are jumping on from YouTube, but I want to get started. And I want to start by asking a very important question to kind of start to tease out the distinction between reasoning and rationalizing. And that first question is this. If you hear someone say they're being rational, let's say you didn't hear it like they're being rational or, well, they're being rational, but you just saw the words they're being rational. Would that be primarily a good thing or primarily a bad thing? Would you think of that as a good thing or a bad thing? So when you hear someone being rational, so say rational good, rational bad. Let me know in the comments what you think. That's number one. And Shmuel, am I saying that right? Hopefully I am. Raman from Sammamish, Washington. Fantastic. I love Sammamish, Washington, our northern neighbor. All right. So Stephen put in the Estacada Fungus Festival. So those of you who are interested in fungus as I am can check out our neighbor's festival. All right. So when you think of someone being rational or you hear someone being accused of being rational, is it primarily a good thing or a bad thing? And it may be that someone is really upset, so emotions are heightened, and you hear someone say, well, at least they're being rational. That might be a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it depends on the context. But when you hear it, if you were accused of being rational, would you take offense or would you be like, yeah, that's a good thing? So let me know in the comments what you think. What about you hear, well, they're being rational. Same thing. Would you think of it as a good thing or a bad thing? All right. So that's number one question. The number two question, and the order of these questions is important as we get into the distinction, is what does it mean when we say they're rationalizing? So let's say that you think that being accused of being rational is necessarily a good thing. I suppose it depends if it's something where you're supposed to be, where being emotional is really preference, like being empathetic and being compassionate, and it's a situation where you should be showing empathy, then maybe being accused of being irrational could be seen as like, oh, you're being like Spock from Star Trek or something like that. But in general, I think being accused of being rational is usually good. And as Stephen says, rationalizing is usually not. Well, how does that work? Well, then if you're being rational, isn't that just like the adjective for rationalizing, the verb? So how do you distinguish between reasoning or providing a reason and rationalizing, providing a rationale, a meaning? So then that gets word salady, right? You're like, okay, all of this meaning, particularly if English is your second language or your third language or your fourth language, it can get really weird. But for the most part, when we think of people rationalizing, we think of them as making excuses. So how do we know? Well, there's a little trick, and this is all we're going to do. It's going to be short and sweet today. There's a little trick that we'll show you, which is reasoning is really starting from things you believe. So hopefully starting from evidence, but also things you believe, and hopefully you believe in reliable, relevant evidence if you're a good thinker, and then making the argument or drawing conclusions from that evidence. So really, it's about starting with more of a hypothesis. You could start with a hypothesis, but then you're finding the reasons, the relevant, reliable evidence to support the conclusion. Rationalizing is starting with the conclusion and working backwards. So if you want to make sure that you are distinguishing between reasoning and rationalizing, it has to do with when you start providing your evidence, when you start providing your reasons. So how many of you are working from home? Let me know if you're working from home. I'm working from home. I've got a lot of rationalizing going on, and I'm just trying to shift a little bit more toward reasoning. How many of you are working from home? And I'm going to throw you for a loop on the rationalizing. So if you're working from home, you might be like, okay, I'm folding laundry now, or I'm unloading the dishwasher now, or I'm sweeping the floor now because I need to unload the dishwasher. The dishwasher needs to be unloaded. The laundry needs to be folded and the floor needs to be swept. Those are all reasons, but if you're doing it and you haven't made a considered decision to do it, you're just doing it and now you're rationalizing it after the fact, you might be rationalizing with good reason. Tricky, because let's say the laundry does need to be done, but if you're rationalizing it after the fact, why am I doing laundry now? It may be because you really don't want to get that proposal done or send those emails out or make those calls or do what you set out to do. And this is where decisions get derailed because it makes sense that these things have to be done. But if you're making sense of that after the fact, then you're really just kind of on autopilot and then justifying after the fact. All right. So rationalizing may have good reasons, but it's a process. Rationalizing is where you might have ad hoc hypotheses. So you throw in things after the fact, whereas rationalizing is thinking about the decision ahead of time. So that's one good distinction. Another thing is think about a few years back, I was in a real estate city council vote. And there was a big real estate developer that was trying to get some zoning changed for his hotel that he was trying to put in, his hotel. So he was presenting a whole bunch of his rationale, so his reasons for the hotel, for the city council to vote to change the zoning. And he kept presenting over and over again in his presentation. He kept presenting, well, it's going to be good for the city. It'll be good for the community. But what he didn't include was that it was really good for his own business. And you think, okay, well, so those reasons were valid. One other way that you can determine whether you're rationalizing or someone else is, or whether you're reasoning, is if you're leaving out major reasons from your rationale. So if this person would have said, yes, I am going to benefit tremendously from this zoning change. My hotel will be able to be built and I will profit tremendously. And the city will profit tremendously from these reasons and these reasons and these reasons, including other hotel operators or other apartment builders or whatever the zoning would allow that will benefit from this zoning change. By adding the reasons that are, people are thinking, okay, you've got some self-interests in there, which is completely valid. We should operate on our own self-interests as well. We shouldn't ignore our self-interests, but ignoring that as part of the rationale, as part of, it feels more like rationalizing versus reasoning. So this is where the first thing is to decide, okay, where did it start? Did it start with the decision where I'm actively making a decision, or did it start after the fact when the conclusion is clear and I'm now providing the reasons in hindsight? That's number one. And number two is, what am I leaving out? If I'm rationalizing, I'm leaving out evidence, I'm leaving out reasons to make my case. Now, that may be very persuasive, but if people sense that you're rationalizing, people sense that you're not rationalizing reasonably, that's when you can get into skepticism that can derail your argument. Because if you're just putting forth the reasons that are your rationalization, then all someone has to do is kind of highlight a reason like, okay, well, what about all the money you're making from your hotel? Now, if you make that argument as part of drawing your conclusion as to why the zoning should be changed, that's a very different outcome for you. And it really goes to all the decisions we make. Now, most of our decisions, the vast majority of our decisions, are made kind of subconsciously. We're not really aware of why we do the things we do. And if we were, we would be incapacitated with hyper analyzing every single thing, taking another sip of coffee. Why am I taking another sip of coffee? Why am I having a second cup of coffee? Why am I not going to the gym? All of these things, we would be constantly mentally, we would just have so much cognitive friction going on. We wouldn't be able to get anything done. However, with decisions that do matter, it's important to stop and say, okay, what are the reasons I'm about to do this versus rationalizing after the fact? So that can have a lot of ramifications, like even, dieting or exercising or getting your work done while you're at home. So Greg says, I do like that rationalizing starts from the solution, but then finding the reasons and the solutions. Yes, that is exactly right. It's just a little tell, because one of the 12 tenets of the Good Thinking Manifesto is understanding the difference between reasoning and rationalizing. And this is not something you can easily Google, because, when you look at the word etymology, and because rationalizing isn't always bad, you can have very reasonable rationalizing, but it's better to reason than to, it's better to rationalize from reason, if that makes sense. And then you think, okay, well, that's a bunch of word salad. Well, am I starting with a hypothesis, reasoning, creating the evidence and the beliefs and supporting the conclusion? Or am I starting with the conclusion and then making sense of everything with ad hoc, after the fact hypotheses? That's really what it's down to. All right, so it's going to be short and sweet today. Definitely let me know if you're here, if it makes sense. How many of you think that this can be helpful? Now, you might be watching this during the live stream broadcast, or you might be watching this afterwards. So the two little takeaway tips are simply, is it at the outset or is it afterwards? And what am I leaving out that may be because of bias or self-interest? Self-interest is a bias that is hiding some of the reasons, making it seem more like a rationalization. Those are the two things. All right. The final thing for bonus, if you are here or if you're seeing this at the end, there's going to be a bonus. We're almost done. Is really to ask yourself a few questions. And the power, reasoning is thinking, and being rational is having a reason, but being reasonable means being in accordance with reason. So those kinds of little tricks and tips can help you. And also, how can you tell if someone's rationalizing or reasoning? Those are kind of some of the questions. So here you can ask yourself a couple of questions. And these are the three. These are the big three to make sure that you understand the difference between rationalizing and reasoning. One is there a hidden motive in my decision? Now, if you're doing it after the fact, like we all do, like I found myself folding laundry and sweeping the floor because I didn't want to get the work done that I needed for this week. So was there a hidden reason? Yeah, part of the hidden reason was that I was sick of sitting in my chair doing the research. So what could I do to make that better? I could use my stand-up desk. I could break down my work into chunks so that I wasn't just rationalizing, well, I had to fold the laundry, well, I had to sweep the floor, well, I had to do this or that or watch this YouTube video. So is there a hidden motive in my decision? On the flip side, is there a hidden motive in someone else's decision? And when you see people that you really want to agree with, and this is a trick, when people you disagree with someone that you want to agree with, sometimes we dismiss reasons that they may have because we think that they're just rationalizing. Maybe they don't like this person. So let's say that there's a boss and they are rationalizing some of the decisions for some of the they're rationalizing some of the decisions, and you like this boss, but because they promoted you, but someone else doesn't like this boss and is pointing out some reasons that may be left out of the equation, hidden motives in the boss's decision. But because you like this boss, you think they're rationalizing by highlighting these hidden reasons. Now, these hidden reasons, these hidden motivations are important to consider, even if the decision seems valid, or the decision seems like a good one, or you like the person making this decision. What hidden motives might there be? Now, this can get into conspiracy theory. You have to have reliable, relevant evidence, and that gets tricky as well. The second question is, what's one thing that I might be ignoring? So what's a hidden reason of my own decision, a hidden motive rather of my own decision, and what's something that I might be ignoring? And that applies to our own decisions as well as the decisions that people around us are making. And then the final question is, this is a tricky one, and start with yourself on this one, and then you can apply it to other people. What's the tiniest thing that would have to be different for me to be wrong? What is the tiniest thing that would have to be different for me to be wrong? Now, you might have this, for me to be wrong, it would take the world changing. Oopsie, look at me. I just used my hands and I whacked my earpiece. The world would have to change for me to be wrong. There would have to be all these kinds of, no, what's the tiniest thing that would have to change for me to be wrong? And those are the three. So is there a hidden motive in my decision? Is there a hidden motive in their decision? What's one thing that I might be ignoring in my decision? And what's the tiniest thing that would have to be different for me to be wrong? So Duncan says, if we jump to a conclusion and let that drive the argument, how do we critically assess the choice? Yes. And that's where post-decision interrogation comes into play. So Duncan, that's a great question. And for asking that, and for a bonus, for those of you who are interested in really assessing your decision to see if you're rationalizing and reasoning, because it's easy to point it out when other people are doing it. It's harder to point it out when we're doing it, which we know is the key to critical thinking, is to improve our own thinking before we start working on trying to improve others' thinking, right? So here is the bonus. The bonus is, for those of you who are interested, I have a decision journal template, where you really kind of keep track of your decisions, not one of the 35,000 decisions we make every day that's like, okay, whether to have another sip of coffee or not, but decisions of consequence, decisions that matter, or decisions that may be irreversible. Those are the two kinds of decisions that you may want to use this decision journal. So if you are interested in getting a free PDF copy of a decision journal template, let me know in the comments by saying, I'd like my free, just say, I'd like my free copy of the decision journal template. That way I know, because sometimes after the fact, if you're watching this after the fact, I can't tell exactly what's what. So if you say that in the comments, I will make sure somehow to get you the copy of a free decision journal template. Another way you can get this is if you are here on LinkedIn, you can go to LinkedIn Learning and my course called Critical Thinking for Better Judgment Decision Making. I think, and this is a little hack, I think the very last movie in the course is called Bonus. And in that bonus, you can download the free exercise file, which is the decision journal template. So there's two ways you can get it. Tell me in the comments or jump over to LinkedIn Learning and take the course or highlight the course and skip down to the bonus if you don't have time and get that journal that way. So that's your little hack. Anyway, hopefully this helped. Reasoning first, rationalizing at the end, and let me know. So Greg says he would like a copy. I will definitely get you a copy of the decision journal template before Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. See you next week.